Once you have downloaded Java and MongoDB, we'll now extract the Ambience folder, the zip folder, and once you have extracted it, you'll see this folder in here. Right, so we can go ahead and navigate into the bin folder. Okay, and if you're on Windows, it's as simple as clicking Run Server. Now, first time you run it, you'll see this prompt over here, which tells you, okay, that yeah, this is not recognized. It's not an issue. So just click More Info, and then press Run anyway. Okay, so if everything goes according to plan, runs well, you will see that the command line interface will persist, right? But if you have some issue, then this thing will close immediately. Okay, so now we'll go into our web browser. Okay, I'm using Firefox, but you can choose to use Chrome as well. So in your URL bar, just type localhost:1740. Okay, so it'll direct you to this page for the sign-on. Okay, so the default account for username is admin. Okay, watch out, it's case sensitive. Okay, and then the password is SA, so Singapore, Australia. They are all in lowercase. So once you enter that, press login, you will be redirected to the license deployer page. Now this only happens for the first time. So here what we want to do is we want to press upload license file. Okay, search for it. Okay, it is this one over here, and then it's basically an Elixir Ambience.license file. Okay, you can ignore the bracket 9. Okay, so if you uploaded it correctly, you will see your license information over here, and I have of course censored my license. Okay, so now we're going to press deploy license. Okay, and in the prompt above, you will note that it tells you to restart your server. So to restart your server, just go into the command line interface and then press Ctrl+C. Okay, and then it'll tell you terminate batch job. Just type Y and then press enter. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we'll go back to the bin folder and then run server again. Okay, now we'll just come back to your browser once it has run and click on the Elixir Ambience logo in the top left. Okay, so now everything is working, right? But you'll notice that of course you don't have any modules installed. So the reason for that is because to enable your new license, you will need to sign out and sign back in as well. Okay, so just remember the username is admin and the password is SA, so Singapore, Australia. They are all in lowercase. So now that we log in, you will see that we have a lot of services over here. Alright, so now that we have deployed the license and re-signed in, we can actually add data into Ambience, which actually reads from MongoDB. So to import data into MongoDB, click the 3 horizontal lines at the top right, choose imports. Okay, and you will see that we are now in the imports module. So what you can do is you can use this browse option, right? Select the file you wish. Alternatively, you can drag and drop files into this drop files here area. Okay, so we're going to choose this file over here. It's a CSV file. So when I press upload, yep, it will register and tell me that yes, the file type is a CSV. So we're going to press next. Okay, so you'll see a warning over here that tells us that collection is required. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to create a collection. Now if you're unfamiliar, in MongoDB, a collection is basically your SQL tables. Okay, another one to take note of is in MongoDB we call them fields rather than what you might call a column. Okay, but they are quite interchangeable. So over here we'll just copy this HR employee attrition. Okay, and then paste it under this collection box. Alright, the rest of the things we can leave blank. Just take note that the action over here, we are selecting new data because we are trying to create a new collection. So if you previously have a collection of the same name, you would then want to use append data or overwrite data. Append data allows you to add new rows, or if you like to call them records, into your existing collection. Overwrite data allows you to remove all the records in your existing collection and replace them with the data from your data file. Okay, so we are using new data because we do not have an existing collection. The database, we'll leave it as eno. Okay, we'll leave strip ID unchecked, and of course the data set will leave it blank, right, so that we can create data sets explicitly in the tutorial next. So let's press next. Okay, over here you will notice that there is a schema being generated. So it's always good to do a check, make sure that the data type that has been inferred from your CSV or Excel file, right, is correct. Okay, in this case we will assume that it's inferred correctly and we'll simply press next. So in here you'll then see a import summary. Alright, do a check, make sure database is eno and collection is HR employee attrition. Action is new data. Now you'll notice that there is two big scary red crosses. Do not be alarmed, these are just indicators that we did not select strip ID and we did not change the schema in the previous page. So if all is alright, just press import. Okay, status is green, then just press finish. Okay, so now that we are done importing the file, you will be able to see it in the history tab over here. What's the name you call it, what's the collection that we imported in as, right? So this confirms that we have successfully imported the file. Okay, so we're now going to create a data set. So click on this button and then select data set, and in here we'll press add. Okay, copy from, we'll leave it as new MongoDB dataset, then press OK. Okay, in the properties over here under name, we'll call it the same as the collection. The database will select eno, and the collection we'll choose the one we just imported. Okay, for everything else you can leave it as blank. Now move over to the schema tab and press infer schema on the top right, and now you will be able to see all the fields that were imported. So let's press save, and now you have successfully created your data set when you see this over here. So the next thing we're going to do, now that we have successfully created a data set, is to explore the use of the visualizer. So click onto this three horizontal lines, select service chooser, and then navigate to the bottom where you will see this visualizations button. You should see a blank page, and at the top you will see the visualizations. Okay, so press add. Okay, in here let's give it a name, right? We can call it hello world, and data set, we'll choose the one that we just created. So subset, we can leave it as blank, then we press OK. Okay, so if your data was successfully imported, you will see over here the number of rows or records that's in that data set. So over here it's 1470. Okay, so there's a 1470 rows in this data set. Okay, so this of course defaults being a pivot table. So what we want to do is we want to add more dimensions to this table. So first thing we'll do is probably to drag and drop. Okay, expand this data tab and drag and drop education field into the rows. Now immediately you'll see that there are now a couple of rows being created, and you can also see the distribution. So in this data set, you see that most of the employees fall under life sciences. Now we can add to this by, for example, adding gender via the drag and drop into the columns. Okay, and at this point, if you want to remove a selection, you can drag into the waste basket over here, and then you will remove that data from either the column, row, or values. Okay, but let's add that back in. Okay, so at this point, if you want to add more dimensions, you can as well. So for example, if you want to add in marital status, you can drag it into the rows or columns. Okay, take note that the order matters. So over here we have education field followed by marital status. So here we have education field followed by marital status. So if you want to swap them around, just drag and drop to the right of it. So now we have swapped it, and you see that marital status comes first before education field. Now the values box allows you to add in numbers, right, so that you can perform aggregation on them. So for example, we want to add in monthly income. Okay, and here you'll notice that it's sum, which is the operation or aggregation method, and then sum what. So you can do, for example, average monthly income. Okay, and of course you can add more values if you require, right? Even the same columns or fields will work as well. So let's say you want to do monthly income again, right? So instead of average, you want to see the max. Okay, so this is max monthly income, and then of course the total monthly income for that particular marital status and education field. Okay, you'll notice that there is color banding over the boxes. So the color actually highlights the intensity. So for example, if you have a higher value, then you see the color being more intense, whereas if your value is lower, then it will be less contrasted. Okay, so once you have added in the data that you require, you can go ahead and close this data tab, and we'll look at the filters. So at the top you have your different types of filters. You can of course click on them, and once they are grayed out, it means they are no longer selected. So by default, all of the filter options are selected. Okay, so right now we are showing we're filtering for only employees who are married or single. Okay, if you want to turn back on the divorce status, then just click back on it. Okay, now what if we only want to see one of each filter? So for example, in marital status, I only want to see single, and in gender, I only want to see male, and in the education field, I want to see other. Right, so you can of course click them one at a time. Okay, but what about this education field? There's many fields here. So the trick to go about this is to click on this multiple select. So what you're doing is you're basically disabling multiple select, and then you're in single select, right? And so in this behavior, as you click, you will unselect the previous option and then only select the new one. So in this case, let's select other. Okay, even if you re-enable it back, you will also notice that the rest of them are not reselected. So if you want to reselect them back all, just press select all, and then they are reselected. Okay, so these are all just tables, right? They can be quite boring, so let's change the visualization. okay, by choosing one of the many options that we have. So it's grouped into area, bar, bubble scatter, hierarchical, line, and pivot. So you can easily toggle between them. Certain charts will require different kind of structures, right? But you will be able to click and explore them as you go along. Okay, so once you're done, remember to press save, okay, to save your configurations. And of course, if you scroll down further, okay, you will be able to change the properties. So the properties is very unique to each of the views, right? So for example, we are now in the chord diagram, the Sankey diagram. If you select the view, you will note that you can choose the thickness of the nodes. So changing this, of course, changes this width of the bars. Okay, so you can also change the link opacity. But one thing to note is it's not always common, because for example, bubble charts do not have, node thicknesses. Instead, you look at things like radiuses. So you will have to adjust again if you want to change your charts. One thing to usually take note of is the width, right? So default we only have the width of 500, right? But if you want to expand it to fill your screen, then of course, depending on your resolution, for me it's about 1002 in order to fill the screen, like so. Now that we have created our visualizer, we can move on to the more advanced topic, which is the dashboards. So yes, navigate to the dashboard module, click add, and give it a name, okay? Then press OK. So over here, you'll see the dashboard name at the top, your page name, okay? And beside it is the filter panel. Okay, so what we're gonna do first is we're gonna add our first view, which I typically like to add in a linear table. So a table listing all your records in your data set. So this will give us a good idea of what to expect from the data, especially useful if you're not familiar with the data set, as in this case. Right, so select linear table, choose the data set you want. Okay, and immediately what's gonna look like, it will populate the entire linear table with all the records in your data set. If you want to further enhance this use, you can always add a search box and do a search ignore case. So you can also export the file if you like. Put this export functions in. Okay, so what we want to do next is we want to add another view, right? Our first official chart. Okay, so let's make this a pie chart. So a pie chart will be, a circle. So we want to have this squarish to, somehow save some spaces. So under view type, choose pie chart. Okay, so the mandatory configurations here are your data set, the key, and the value. So the key is what you're going to group it by. So let's group it by gender to show the gender breakdown. So you can see that there are more males than females. So there we have it, our first chart. Okay, so what if we want to add another chart? Just press the add view button. Okay, so this time we'll go with the trusty bar chart. Okay, let's put it below here. And in here, bar chart is the default selection. And we will add in the data set configuration. So here what is mandatory is your X and your Y axis. So X axis, for example, we can choose something like job satisfaction, followed by performance rating. Okay, so here of course you're seeing performance rating being quite high because this is using a count, right? So what you want to do probably is put as average. Okay, so what this means is job satisfaction is your x-axis, whereas y-axis is the performance rating, and you see that there is not much differences here. So perhaps let's change this a little bit, choose something that looks a bit nicer. Let's choose marital status, and maybe for Y we can choose business travel. Okay, so this is still under a count, right? If you recall, under business travel there are many options. So what you might want to do is to add business travel as a group, like so. Okay, so to further configure your charts to be more readable, the first most important thing we always want to do is to add a title. So the title usually describes what the chart is doing. For example, in this case, we are looking at x-axis, the marital status, versus y-axis, business travel. So it will be something like business travel based on marital status. Okay, so over here, you see that now we have filled up about 60% of the title bar. But what if you want to describe it further, right? Then you can actually use this title tooltip. Okay, and usually if you use the title tooltip, you will need to tick this title info icon. So the title tooltip allows you to describe your chart in detail. So for example, if you need to type a really long explanation on your chart describing its use, okay, access and purpose, use the title tooltip. Okay, so when you press save, what it's gonna look like is as you hover over it, you can see the full explanation. Yet the benefit of this is that you do not clutter your title bar. So title bar, you want to try to keep it as short yet descriptive, right? Whereas your tooltip can be as long as you require it because it only shows when you hover. Okay, so next thing we want to add is for example your axis titles. So under x-axis, you can add a title over here. So for example, x-axis is marital status. Okay, in this case it might be quite obvious already, but the very important one, right, is to do it for your y-axis, right? So y-axis is simply just count, right? So you'll notice maybe you have a margin issue here. So if you have a margin issue here, you can adjust via this area over here, or go into margins, okay, and then change and tweak this so that it fits your chart nicely. So you want to avoid having too little space, like for example if you put 0 here, then your chart is actually touching the left side, right, and you can't read the legends anymore. So usually choose a sensible number so that it looks rather neat, like in this case. Okay, if you'd like to choose your color, you can do so as well. So the default color is this very high contrast color. You might want to choose something pastel themed, right, which is usually qualitative 2, right, you can actually cycle between them to find the one that you like. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to add more interaction to the dashboard. So what we'll do here is we'll add some filters. So if you haven't already opened your filter panel as I have, you can click this right arrow, which if you hover over it says open filter panel. Then press the plus sign to add control of filters. Okay, and you will see a huge list of different filter options. More details can be found in the documentation for Ambience, but we will go through the select filter. So the select filter allows you to choose one filter criteria at a time, whereas something like the checkbox filter allows you to choose multiple criteria, and it's matched based on an OR statement. So a useful suggestion for how you name your controls would be to state the type followed by the field name. So in this case, we're using a select filter, okay, and if you have already decided your field name, you can add that in. So for this example, let's choose select and then gender. So we are using the select filter on the field gender. Okay, so here you need to select your data set, okay, and the field to filter on, which is gender. Okay, so we're not done yet. What we need to do now is to add the controlled by. So controlled by allows you to explicitly state which charts will be controlled by a particular filter. So clicking on the properties button, the little gear icon, will allow you to pull up the view properties. You will need to press the plus sign under controlled by, choose the filter you've just created, and now you can control it. Okay, so I'm gonna demo it. So if I press save, okay, under this filter panel, if I toggle it to female, then you'll notice that the pie chart shows only female, right? Whereas if I toggle it between the two, right, male, then you'll show only male. So why doesn't this chart change? Well, the reason for that is because we do not have a controlled by over here. So what I'm saying now is, even though you do not have a gender axis in this bar chart, you can still control it so long as you put the controlled by in there and it's using the same data set. So let's press save. Okay, and under select gender, okay, so what if we want to, do away with the filter panel? You want to use the charts to control the other charts. You can do that simply by putting in a select to control. So only certain charts will have this select to control option. So you do look out for them. So for example, for the pie chart, we can put select to control, select gender. Okay, so you might want to take out this controlled by like this, so that you are controlling the filter without being controlled by it. So sounds a bit confusing, but let me press save and demonstrate it to you. So right now if I click male, right, the filter has been changed to show only males, right? So even under this bar chart, it will change accordingly. But note that the pie chart doesn't change because it doesn't have the controlled by configuration. Okay, so we're going to create one more chart as an example. So click add view. Okay, so this time will be a pivot table. So choose the view type as pivot table, the data set as HR employee attrition, and likewise you will see this count equals 1470, very familiar of the visualizer. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to add the columns, the rows, and optionally the measures. So if, for example, you choose something like job involvement, right, which is a 1 out of 4, and then the gender, Okay, maybe let's choose marital status. Okay, likewise, you can also add multiple columns, multiple rows, multiple measures if you like, right? And then in this case as well, similar to the visualizer, the order will matter. Okay, so now that we've added them, what we want to do is we want to add a measure. So measure can be something like monthly income. Okay, you can configure this further by clicking the 3 dots beside it. So you're configuring the measure itself. Okay, you can change the operation to something that you like, the alignment, and the label as well. So this one will be, for example, if you choose monthly income and average it, so you can just call it average monthly income. Right, you can use shorthand so that your titles don't get too long. You can also change the format. So right now you see it's all under .0.0. If you don't want to show decimal places, or if you wish to show decimal places, you can actually use one of the top 3. But in this case, because we're looking at monthly income, you might want to have the $sign. You can choose this one of this. Right, so let's use the .00 since it's an average. Okay, then we press OK, and now you have your $sign over here. Now if you wish to export this, you can show export PDF and show export XLSX. Right, then the button will be here. Okay, so one unique filter that the pivot table has is called the pivot filter, which we'll create now. Okay, under type, let's select pivot filter. Okay, choose the data set, and remember that we need to add in the select to control. Okay, so if you recall, having a select to control allows your particular view to control the filters in the filter panel, right? But they still need to be able to control something. Otherwise, your filters, they're not controlling anything, then they don't really provide any value. So let's say you want to use this filter on the linear table. Just add the control by. Let's use pivot filter. Okay, so at this point, if you click on any of the cells in the pivot table, you will be able to choose those of, for example, this level of employee job involvement versus the marital status. So for example, if I want to see those in human resources with job involvement 2 out of 4 and single, I just need to click on this cell, right? And I return with 4 records. Okay, and of these 4 records, I can also download it as, for example, as a CSV file, right? And it will show me those 4 records. Next thing we're gonna do is to add a new dashboard page, because this one is getting a bit full. Okay, so to give it a name, for consistency's sake, let's call it second, right? Because it comes after the page first. Press OK, and you'll see that now you have a blank page. So what we want to do is press edit, press add view, copy from blank view. So more or less the same as what we've already done. Okay, but in this case, let's choose a more popular view type, which is the sunburst chart. So the sunburst chart is a little bit like a pie chart, but you have multiple levels that you can zoom into. So likewise, choose the dataset HR employee attrition. Okay, and the mandatory fields for sunburst chart is to include the value. Okay, so value, if you're going to use something like count, you can choose any as usual, right? But if you want to choose something like monthly income, okay, then you can actually change the aggregation. So what we want to do now is to add the columns. Okay, so for example, we want to begin with gender as the first level. Okay, so you see right now it's no different from a pie chart or a donut chart. Okay, so we see, okay, there's more males than females. But what's unique about this chart is you can then add more levels. So for example, if you choose department, okay, you see progressively you get more and more levels. Okay, so after department, if let's say you want to choose marital status, and then you want to choose business travel. Okay, so now you can see the charts getting a little bit busy. Okay, so let's press save. So how this chart works is you're reading things as a segment of the parent. So for example, if you look at this quadrant over here, research and development, okay, this research development is a subset of this male data point. Okay, so for example, is if you look at this part under merit, okay, this is a subset of sales, which is a subset of female. Okay, so at some point the segments become too small and it becomes quite difficult to read. So this is where the sunburst charts really shines. So for example, on your screen, you might not be able to read this portion, but it actually says human resources. So it's females who work in human resources. And then the other marital status within, you can hover over them to actually see what they are, but it's very, very small and you need to be very precise with your mouse. So how do you address that? Simple, right? Just click on, for example, if you want to focus on human resources, click human resources here, and it'll show you all the females who work under human resources. So from here we can see that those who work in human resources and are married, right, they travel very rarely, right? Much larger percentage than those who are single. Whereas those who are divorced, right, they travel very frequently, right? More so even than those who are single. So this is how you use the sunburst chart. So if you click on the middle segment, right, it will actually bring you up one step at a time. Okay, likewise, you can click down into each segment individually, right, or skip a few levels by clicking on them directly, like so.